At sundown on Saturday, April 12th, Jewish people worldwide will celebrate the first night of Passover. Next year, in the White House, Barack Obama's first presidential Seder is a new Passover children's book by award-winning author Richard Michelson and Caldecott honor-winning illustrator E.B. Lewis. The picture book introduces readers to the true story of how a small Passover Seder dinner on the 2008 presidential campaign trail inspired then-Senator Barack Obama to bring this meaningful tradition into the White House for the first time. And we are joined by the book's author, Richard Michelson of Northampton's R. Michelson Gallery fame, erstwhile poet laureate of the city of Northampton. Rich has written many books for children, teens, and adults. His books have been listed among the 10 best of the year by the New York Times, Publishers Weekly, and the New Yorker. He's received a National Jewish Book Award. We have another National Book Award winner on the show today, too, your friend, Martin Espada. We are also joined by Eric Lesser, a former Massachusetts state senator and Obama White House aide. He's probably the reason you've ever heard of the phrase East-West Rail or West-East Rail. In his time on Beacon Hill, he is currently senior counsel at the law firm Wilmer Hale and busy taking time away from your schedule of suing people to talk with us about this true story. This book is great, first of all. I mean,
Thank you.
As a children's book and as a story, it's wonderful. And it's wonderful that so many of our local connections have so much to do with it. And it's also being published by the PJ Library Association, which has very strong connections to the Valley as well with the Harold Grinspoon Foundation. But can I call you Senator Eric Lesser?
Retired, but yeah.
Retired
you
Senator
can call me Eric.
Eric.
I think we're on a first name basis.
Yes, I think we are.
Yeah, if
Eric,
you're calling him Senator, you're calling me Laureate. That's it. That's it. Otherwise, it's Eric and Rich.
we'll get to how you got involved in this story in a little bit there, Rich. But Eric, this is a wonderful story of your celebrating Passover on the campaign trail without your family. Can you tell us about the true story behind this wonderful story?
Yeah, so thanks so much for having me. It's so fun to talk about this, and happy Passover to everyone. Coming
Hag
up.
Sameach, right?
Sameach. Well
Yes,
done.
yes.
Well done.
I got a lot of Jewish friends.
So good. So the story really begins back in 2008 during Obama's, at the time, long shot presidential campaign. I was a very junior aide that traveled with him. My job was basically to keep track of all the luggage and the logistics for him.
Let me stop you right there.
Yeah.
I can't let the luggage thing go without saying what is in Obama's luggage?
That's a state secret. Still classified.
Okay, all right.
In the book, we have his PJs in honor of PJ Library. He's traveling with his PJs so he can get ready for
I
bed.
didn't make that connection, but I'm
Yes.
glad I have now.
So we were in Pennsylvania in April of 2008, the night of the first Seder. And usually I would come home to Longmeadow. I grew up in Longmeadow, right next door to where we are right now, to do Seder with my family. But the logistics were just too hard. We were traveling nonstop. So we decided, I was traveling with a group of other young aides, a guy named Herbie Ziskin and Arun Chaudhry, who are also featured in the book. We basically decided that we would celebrate, the three of us, no matter where we were going to be. And it turned out we were going to be in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. So I mentioned this to then Senator Obama when we were traveling on one of our flights. I said, hey, Passover's coming up. Arun, Herbie, and I are going to be doing this Seder if you want to join. And, he actually said he would, but I didn't think much of it. I thought it was kind of being polite.
Yeah.
There was kind of a lot going on. Fast forward, the night of the first Seder, we found a windowless basement conference room at the Harrisburg Sheraton in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And we kind of threw together ad hoc the supplies.
That is, he
staff.
stole the supplies.
Exactly.
Yeah, that doesn't
let's
come
get
across
to
in the
it.
book. Did you steal them? Where did they come from?
Well, my cousin actually stole them. Yeah. So this is actually kind of a fun story. So we began the day in Philadelphia, and Obama was going to be doing a whistle-stop train tour from Philadelphia to Harrisburg, making 6 or 7 stops along the way. My job was to load all the luggage onto the U-Haul and drive it ahead so that people would have their suitcases when they arrived at the hotel. Before I left Philly, I called my cousin, who was a student at UPenn, and I said to him, hey, I need some supplies for a Seder tonight. So he ran over to the Hillel, broke into the Hillel, and grabbed a box of matzah, a bottle of Manischewitz wine, a can of macaroons, and a handful of Maxwell House Haggadahs.
We waited to publish this book until statute of limitations have passed.
So we were were all gathered in this kind of ad hoc setting in Harrisburg, and then all of a sudden Obama poked his head in and said he wanted to join, and he sat down with us, and we get to the end of the Seder, and there's a tradition where everybody raises their glass and they say, next year in Jerusalem. So we raised our glass. We said next year in Jerusalem. We all put our glasses down, and then he raised his glass and he said next year in the White House. We all said, all right, amen. Fast forward a year later, he's now president. He's in the White House, and he was walking by my kind of little cubby desk one day, and he said to me, "Hey, Lester, are we doing the Seder?" And I kind of got a little startled, and I was a little sheepish. I don't know, sir, are we? And he looked at me kind of with a little bit of a grin, and he goes, well, last year I said next year in the White House, and it's next year, and we're in the White House, so we're going to do the Seder.
That's great, because this was a historic event. This was the first time the White House had ever celebrated the Seder, and we're speaking with former Senator Eric Lesser, who is one of the main players in the book Next Year in the White House, Barack Obama's first presidential Seder, written by our friend Richard Michelson.
Actually, one of the cool things about it, and I think one of the important stories that Rich really captures about what happened, is Obama was insistent that the group that meet in the White House be the same group that was with him in Pennsylvania. And I think a piece of history for people to appreciate, when the Seder happened in 2008, it was one of the absolute lowest points of Obama's career. This was during the Pennsylvania primary. People were expecting him to lose the primary. He ended up losing Pennsylvania handily to Hillary Clinton. This is right around when the Jeremiah Wright controversy happened.
His former pastor.
Back in 2008. So he remembered that, and he was insistent that the group that was with him at a low point was also the group that was going to be with him at the high point. So Herbie and I were kind of in charge of corralling and organizing the Seder with the same kind of core group. It was everyone fit around one table, and we did it all 8 years of his presidency from 2009 through 2016.
Rich, how do you enter the story? How do you get picked to write this story of this historic event that happened at the White House? You being from Northampton, as I mentioned, Northampton's erstwhile poet laureate.
Well, just lucky, I guess. I picked up the phone one day. Well, do we pick up phones anymore? I got an email one day from the Grinspoon Foundation, the PJ Library. Eric is friendly with Harold Grinspoon, as am I, and Harold Grinspoon, of course, is the force behind this wonderful organization. And Harold knew the story, thought it would make a good children's book. And the committee thought that I might be the right person to write it. A lot of my books have to do with race relations. PJ has been very good to me. I think this is my 6th book of theirs that they're giving away. I think they gave away 30,000 copies earlier. Well, not earlier this month, last month, because we're in a new month.
We're in a new month, the month of the poets.
Yeah. So they have my book Across the Alley, which is about a black Christian child and a Jewish child who aren't allowed to play with each other. There was my book about Martin Luther King and Abraham Joshua Heschel.
Who's one of my heroes, by the way. Not just Martin Luther King, but Abraham Joshua Heschel, who I think is a wonderful Jewish philosopher, scholar.
Amazing,
and his
man.
view of wonder has inspired my entire life.
So they knew my interests, and so they gave me an opportunity to see if I wanted to write this book. And I said, maybe. I didn't want to accept the job unless I knew I could do a book that would be interesting for adults and for children.
Right.
So I said, give me some time to think about it and set me up with Eric, because I want to talk about, to him, the little side things that aren't necessarily newsworthy, or the things that make the story pop.
What were some of them in this, Rich Michelson, that really popped for you?
Well, every a Seder can't end until the children find the afikomen.
Yes, there's the hidden matzah.
There's the hidden matzah, and then they get a gift. So the gift was a chew toy for the dog Bo. That's already telling me, okay, now I can put a dog in the story. So, there's not a story for children or adults in the world that doesn't get improved by putting a dog in.
That's 100% correct. What's funny is that, and you said you wanted it to be good for children and adults. For the adult part in the back, it goes a little bit into the, like, okay, we took some creative license about when Bo entered the White House. Not actually there for that first Passover, but was there for subsequent Passovers. So poetic license.
He was a week late, but the chew toy did come. And that's the sort of thing that lets me know, okay, I'm going to involve Malia and Sasha. We're going to start with the girls because, we want to get kids involved. They're not interested in 3 young 20-year-old males in the basement of a hotel with no windows, right? Okay, so that's the story. And we can start. You open the book and you see the 2 young girls, Malia and Sasha, and the tables being set. And then Obama comes in. And he's then in the one telling the story of how this came to be. But he left me with some amazing props, like the original Maxwell House Haggadah that is shown in the back of the book.
That's the stuff that's great for grown-ups. The recipe for the flourless golden apricot cake.
Yeah, every children's book needs a recipe for
I think so, too. Dogs and recipes, you really hit the nail on the head.
So I called back PJ Library and he said, sign me up.
And we are talking about the PJ Library published book Next Year in the White House, Barack Obama's First Presidential Seder by Richard Michelson, who joins us. And the actual story is inspired by former Senator Eric Lesser, who appears both in actual picture form, sitting next to President Barack Obama at that first Seder, and also in illustrated form. How do you feel being illustrated now?
I'm just relieved Rich made me thinner.
Well, you didn't do it.
Or EB. EB did.
Yeah,
absolutely. Actually, a funny
because the
story.
children's book puts on 20 pounds, they usually say. Yeah.
Funny story about that. So EB, who's so talented, I mean, the pictures are just so beautiful.
Yeah.
He actually flew down to D.C. and Herbie, Arun lives in Europe, so it was a little hard logistically for him. But Herbie and I did some posing for EB so that he could get the pictures just right.
This was a historic event. Easter has been celebrated in the White House for many, many generations, and the Christmas, I think it even goes back even farther. What did it mean for you as a Jewish member of the president's staff to have initiated this tradition?
It was surreal. I have a memory, actually. My grandmother was still alive at the time of the first Seder at the White House, and there was a big picture afterward that was kind of splashed all over the news. And my aunt was down in Brooklyn. She lived at a retirement home in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, and my aunt was with her for Passover and showed her the picture of all of us. And my grandmother, who at the time was almost 90 years old, kind of looked at it and said, only in America would something like that happen. And I think that kind of sums it up. One of the things that was, I think, uniquely American about it was President Obama's intentionality around connecting the ancient Israelite story of freedom in the book of Exodus with the more modern American story of the civil rights movement and emancipation from slavery. After we would finish reading the Haggadah and completed the Exodus story, the president would have everybody go around and read section by section of the Emancipation Proclamation.
Wow.
A way to quite literally tie the stories together.
Right. 2 peoples who came from slavery got to celebrate this holiday about emancipation from slavery in the White House.
Which was, ironically, built by slaves.
Exactly.
So, it really puts a fine point on it.
On a lighter note, I have a fun memory of the White House chef would prepare the meal, and everybody submitted recipes to the chef from their family. One of the participants submitted gefilte fish, and I have a very surreal memory of this very fancy little piece of gefilte fish getting put on White House dishware. And I was just laughing because, from the shtetl and the old country where they used to make gefilte fish, no one could have imagined it would be served on a White House dish covered in gold leaf. So.
Did you have Manischewitz at that first Passover at the White House?
We did have Manischewitz, and we kept the Maxwell House Haggadahs. So old school.
This tradition continued throughout the entirety of the Obama White House, the Passover Seder. Anyone know currently whether or not this is still being celebrated in the White House or will be this Passover, April 12th?
It's a good question. Neither President Trump in his first term nor President Biden in his term celebrated it this way. There were different ways that both presidents recognized the holiday, but this kind of family-style Seder in the White House in this way has not happened since President Obama.
I know that PJ Library's mission and the Harold Grinspoon Foundation's mission is to make sure that a lot of these books honoring Jewish tradition can be easily received by folks. Where are these books available? You mentioned, Rich, earlier 30,000 of these books were published?
30,000 were given away by PJ Library. They partnered with Penguin Random House, Crown Books, who did a hardcover edition of the book, which is available at bookstores everywhere, online. It's doing very well as well commercially, as opposed to the PJ Library edition.
Rich, I also want to mention, as I've said, that you're poet laureate of the city of Northampton, that you on April 4th will be at the Forbes Library in a poetry reading with our friend Leslie Newman. You're also at the Stockbridge Library on April 5th. And former Senator Eric Lesser, as I mentioned, now you're a senior counsel at the law firm of Wilmer and Hale. Any thoughts on the current political situation, or have you retired from weighing in?
We gotta go.
What about East-West Rail?
Well, we were having such a nice time. We don't have to bring up politics.
That was something that, I think anybody who knows about your political career thinks that East-West Rail or West-East Rail and Eric Lesser are synonymous. What do you think the over-under is, given the current fiscal situation with the federal government, on that being feasible?
I appreciate you asking. I do think it's still going to happen. The governor's committed to it. The state legislature's committed to it. We've got, both Congressman Neal and Jim McGovern are still focused on it. The money has been allocated already for the two new Amtrak routes, which are going to start, I believe, in 2029. So we're getting there. It's a precarious, obviously, with the current environment, but I do think it will happen.
Well, it was not lost on me that while we were having this conversation, I could hear the lonesome train whistle of the trains at Union Station around the corner from
There will be more. There will be more, yeah.
And this book is fantastic. Whether or not you have celebrated Passover yourself, it's a wonderful piece of history. It's a great way to introduce your children and your grown-ups to some of the real history behind the Passover as celebrated in the Bible, as well as the real history of the celebration of Passover at the White House back in 2008. The book is called Next Year in the White House, Barack Obama's first presidential Seder, written by Richard Michelson, who's been joining us, and inspired by the true story of former Senator and White House aide Eric Lesser. Thank you both so much for coming in.
Thank you, Monte.
Thanks so much.